Hello. Wanted to talk a little bit about petty cash and how to handle petty cash. So let me open up the screen here. Okay. So what petty cash is petty cash is a system where a company would keep some cash on hand in a location, and then they would use that for different small expenses like maybe meals for the office or office supplies or maybe parking if they had to pick someone at the airport or someone had to go downtown or postage expense, different things of that nature. So if a company has a petty cash account in a location, they're going to appoint a custodian. The custodian is responsible for the petty cash. Typically, it'll be in a drawer. It'll be basically kind of in a locked drawer, and the custodian will have the key. And then typically they'll keep it in one of their desk drawers that they'll keep locked. And anyone I've ever known who's been the custodian um, is typically then will lock their office door, like when they leave for lunch, when they leave at the end of the day. If they're going to be out on vacation, they keep their door locked. They take a lot of responsibility towards safeguarding that money. Typically, petty cash is anywhere from $200 to $500. Mainly, typically, probably $200 to $300. It's not a lot of money, but it is. But basically, that person is responsible for it. Typically, who they have responsible for it or this is a custodian. It's basically like a lower level supervisor. Typically, a lot of times, mid level supervisor would be that person responsible for it. Couple of things here. A couple of things here. Going to go over some journal entries related to it. Now, if you were setting up a petty cash fund, let's say you establish a petty cash fund for $500. The journal entry would be that you would debit petty cash and you would credit cash. That would basically be the journal entry that you would do to set it up. Petty cash is it's kind of accounted for as a cash and cash equivalent. So you're basically just moving it out of your general cash account into a specific petty cash account. Now, so what happens with petty cash is that it's set up, you've got a custodian. Employees would go to the custodian and would say, I need $50 for postage. And so basically, the custodian gives them the money. The employee fills out a ticket, what they need it for, signs it. The ticket stays in the drawer. The employee gets the cash. The employee goes and does whatever they need to do with the money, whether it's postage or parking or whatever. The employee then brings back a receipt and any change, gives it to the custodian. The custodian then kind of staples the receipt to the back of the ticket, puts the change back in the drawer, and corrects kind of what was taken. So if they came for $50 and left with $50 but only used 35, then they'd bring back $15 change, a receipt that would be stapled to the back of the ticket. They would correct that only 35 was taken on the ticket, and then they would put that back in the drawer. The change and the ticket would go back in the drawer. So basically, you've got cash and you've got tickets where someone has taken cash. And at any time that you count that drawer, the amount of cash plus the tickets should equal what the account was set up for initially. So let's look at an example of kind of how that would be accounted for. At the end of the month, well, actually, but let's just kind of work it into the transaction. So at the end of the month, the custodian would go in there and they would count the drawer and make sure that what cash was in there plus the tickets equaled what it was set up for. And then at that time, it's typically on the last day of the month, the custodian would then do a journal entry to record all those transactions, because that's the only way those transactions get on the books, is basically by doing a manual journal entry to record them. And then the last day of the month, the custodian goes to the bank and gets whatever cash that was used during the period to bring the petty cash account back up to what it was set up for. So if $175 was used, they record the journal entry to get all those transactions on the book on the last day of the month, and then they go to the bank, get $175. So when we start the first day of the next month, the petty cash drawer opens with whatever amount it was set up for. So let's look at some more examples of transactions here. At the end of the month, the tickets were The tickets were for transportation, $35, meals, $125, office expenses, $160. $180 worth of cash was still in the drawer. So basically, in this case, we would add it up. It was initially set up for $500, and $320 was spent between $35 for transportation, $125 for meals, $160 for office supplies. So basically, the drawer was in balance. The tickets plus the cash that's in there should equal the amount it was set up for. And so they would do this journal entry. They would debit transportation expenses for 35, debit meals expense for 125, just kind of like basically whatever the tickets were made out for. And then debit office supplies for 160. It's typically expenses. Most of the things you're going to be recognized are expenses, but you will have assets if it's like an office, like if you're getting office supplies with the cash. They would credit cash for 320, which is the total of all of the tickets. Now, what this does in essence is then, like I said, the custodian goes to the bank, and in this example right here, would get $320 cash. So this journal entry records all the entries to the account, and also acts as a way to replenish the petty cash fund by going to the bank, by getting $320, bringing it back, putting it in the drawer. So the drawer starts the first day of the next month with $500 in there, which is what it was set up for. So this is a good example how you would establish it. And then at the end of the month, how they would go in and do a journal entry to get all those transactions on the book and replenish the account up to where it should be, where it should be, which is the balance it was set up for. Now, same information, except let's say there was only 175 left in the petty cash drawer. So in that case, we would have $320 of tickets, 175 in the cash drawer. That would mean we're $5 short, because 320 plus 175 would equal $495. So we're $5 short. So what that would mean is our first three parts of the entry would be the exact same. We'd debit depreciation expense, or excuse me, transportation expense. We would debit meals expense. We would debit office supplies. But notice here, we debit an account called cash over and short, or sometimes you'll see it as cash short and over. It's basically the same account. And this basically represents any shortage or overage in the cash account. And then we would get $325 cash to basically make sure that the drawer starts the next month with $500 in it on the first day of the month. So cash short and over is kind of a miscellaneous expense or a miscellaneous revenue, depending on whether it's short or whether it's over. If it's short, it's going to basically be written off as an expense and accounted for as a miscellaneous expense. If the drawer is over and we've got too much cash in there or more cash than we should have, then it's going to be a miscellaneous revenue and just going to be added to revenue in that case. Now, if we wanted to increase the cash in the petty cash drawer to $600, then this is a typical journal entry you see, because sometimes companies go in and either add to the amount or decrease the amount. Then basically in this case, we would debit petty cash for 100, we would credit cash for 100, and the custodian would actually go to the cash and get another $100 and bring it back and add it to the drawer. Anytime you increase the amount in the drawer, you would book an entry like this where you debit petty cash, you credit cash, but then that custodian also then has to go physically get cash and bring it in and put it in the drawer. Now, one other example is, what if we decrease the cash in petty cash to, let's say, 300 in this case? Then how would we do that? Then what we would do is we would debit cash, in this case for 200, because we started with 5 and now we're taking it down to 2. and we would credit petty cash. So in this case, if the drawer were being decreased in value, the custodian would actually pull $200 out. They would make this journal entry. They would take that $200 to the bank account and put it into the company's bank account. Petty cash is accounted for as kind of cash and cash equivalents. It's accounted for as cash and cash equivalents. So it's one of those things that you're just really moving cash from one source of cash to another. That's really what you're doing with petty cash. So in this case, you take it out of the drawer, you take it back and put it in the bank if you were decreasing the amount that's in the petty cash. Okay, so that is petty cash, and good subject. And but yeah, some companies use petty cash. Others today have gone more with credit cards. So it is kind of a mixed bag there. Some use more like company cards, others use petty cash. So that is all for petty cash.